Orlando has officially punched their ticket to the UFL playoffs coming up in a couple weeks. But we still got three teams fighting for those four spots. Who's it going to be? It's the Bottom Line Podcast, and it starts now.
And that's the bottom line. You want a war? You're gonna get one.
The cream rise to the top, oh yeah.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Hard work pays off. Dreams come true. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do.
Let's just bring them up right off the bat, because what you see is what you get for like the first hour or so.
Princess Wave.
Hey, Marty. Hopefully you're not riding with Brett, because you're still out on the interstate if you are. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining. Boy, Chris, you guys had a rough week. So we're definitely going to talk about DC and what things look like for them going forward. But what do you think, KJ? You got a chance to see the games this last weekend?
Man, surprisingly, I'd say from some of the scoring margins, they were close games, but I guess, outside of maybe Birmingham's matchup with Columbus, really good football, honestly. For the ones I didn't get to watch holistically, I watched some recaps, and I mean, it's surprising to see, especially at the end of the season, not as much, but I guess I'm excited because everybody's playing as best they can, knock down, drag out, because, as you said, we've got 3 open spots still for playoff contention, so everybody's hungry to try to seal the deal in these last couple of weeks and score their ticket.
Well, let's get into the first one here. And, boy, as far as I'm concerned, the UFL hit a home run with the Fort Hood game on Friday night. I hope it's one of those things that they do consistently every year, because I don't know, the storylines were awesome. You can't, and even when Orlando scored that touchdown and they shot the cannons and scared the bejesus out of the.
That was funny. The receiver, yeah, or run back.
That was priceless. And then when he said it reminded him of it back home in Pontiac, that was even better. But once again, Dallas had every opportunity to win this game, and just some unfortunate drops. And not only drops by the receivers, but there at the end when Dallas had their opportunity for that last drive to possibly tie it. Not only does he hit the guy right in the face mask or the chest, but then it bounces off and turns into an interception. So,
yeah, nothing you can do with that.
But I think it's obvious that the frustration is mounting. I mean, Coach Neuheisel, love him as a coach, followed him this whole season and been to a ton of his pressers, and even he's finding it hard to stay optimistic, because every week when he goes to the post games, it's just the same old reason on why they're losing these games.
Right.
So Orlando, and we'll get into Jack Plummer, who actually got the Offensive Player of the Week. We'll get into some of his performance a little later, but I don't know. I come out of this game still, I don't know. Maybe I'm just, I've had the last 3 seasons with Coach Beck as the head coach of the St. Louis Battlehawks. Maybe the 22-8 regular season record, which is definitely impressive as a regular season record, but he's winless when the games matter in the postseason. So is there anything in this game, KJ, that leads you to believe that with Jack Plummer as their quarterback, that things are going to be different by a Coach Beck-led team?
I'd say the biggest thing when I look back over the game footage against Dallas, I mean, I think there's truth to what I want to say Beck's, who quoted it last week, and plenty of coaches have reiterated this, but, despite some of the teams having lesser records than the others, you've seen the competitive ball over the last week or two that's been played. And I think the margin, it is true to say and fair to say that it's a lot closer with these 8 teams holistically in this league than you might say in even, a single division of NFL football or something to that extent. And with that being said, I mean, when I look back over the game footage, I think for me, the biggest glaring thing on Orlando's end was they were kind of slow to get started. First part of the game, I think, while it stayed close within the first quarter, second quarter, they were slow to get points on the board. And Dallas had a lead there basically up until I think it was close to halftime. So, I mean, obviously it's not how you start, it's how you finish. But with that being said, I think in the playoffs, there's a less margin for error, even more so than there is, in this small of a league in the regular season. And I think that's what we see in the playoffs in years past. Beck is slowly kind of, you might do great through the regular part of the year, but then when you get to playoffs, it's, put up or shut up. There's practically zero margin for error in those games, and he gets exposed for one reason or another. So for me, that was the biggest thing I saw against Dallas. I got bounced around there, apologies, but I guess with regards to the margin comment, even that being said and acknowledged, I think that this game should have been a bigger lead by Orlando, if you will, against Dallas, just based on how we've seen the Renegades slowly kind of decline and struggle through a majority of the season post, week 2 or 3. Be that as it may, they got the win, so that's great. But yeah, I would still echo your sentiment, Ed, that I think in the playoffs we're likely to see potentially the same thing with Orlando, either coming up short or getting exposed via one team or another that they play a matchup with. If you could surprise us, they can make it to the championship. They've only got to make it through one round. Once they get in, once they're in the playoffs now, they're locked in. But if they get past that first week, they're at least in the championship, which would be, I think, further than he theoretically has ever made it before. So, I mean, that would be at least a markable improvement, even if he doesn't win the full, dance. But it remains to be seen. I wouldn't necessarily rate Plummer, I think, in my top 3 QBs in the league, but I mean, that doesn't mean they can't still take it all the way. So,
And, with them being the number one seed, it's important for St. Louis to get a home game for the playoffs. It's equally important for him,
yeah,
Coach back for Orlando, to get a home game that first week. It's funny. You watch these power rankings, put out by pretty much everybody. And at the beginning of the season and even through, up to the last couple weeks, DC was number one, and it wasn't even close. And I would have had to agree that DC going away was the number one.
right.
But it's funny how everybody can watch one weekend game and suddenly they have a totally different perspective on who the best team in the league is.
Right.
I mean, DC, now granted, DC consistent when Jordan Ta'amu was still at the helm, number one, opening season loss, but since then reeled off 5 straight wins. They have one hiccup against Louisville. Then all of a sudden, they're not the best team anymore. Just after 1 week, all of a sudden it's St. Louis. So St. Louis is the best team. Everybody puts power rankings out. More than not, has St. Louis as number one. So then they screw the pooch this last weekend against Houston. And suddenly, everybody who thought St. Louis was this powerhouse number one team that was number one in the power rankings, suddenly they got them slid down to third or fourth, and now it's Orlando's turn.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, you're echoing the sentiment here with the margin of difference between these teams being, toothpicks of differentials. But
everybody forgets that Orlando's strength of schedule, the first part of the season, I guess we didn't think was that good. Now, granted, they played Louisville twice, and it's turning out that Louisville's kind of found themselves here the last couple weeks. And so, but I think rather than coming out with these weekly power rankings, it should be more like who's hot, who's not.
right. Trending.
Because now that Jordan Ta'amu's out with a knee injury, that they haven't really come out and said exactly what the knee injury is. I would think if he's lost for the season, it's got to be either a tear to the MCL or ACL, or it's got to be a pretty bad strain to where they got to shut him down for multiple weeks, and they're not going to take a chance. But let's go ahead and is there anything, I mean, when you look at Jack Plummer's stats for the game, I mean, 24 for 36, 238 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But, he had that long 71-yard run up the sideline for a touchdown. I would say with stats like that, that probably qualifies him as a game manager more than it does they're starting to talk about him being a potential MVP candidate for the league. I find it funny that they start talking about it more since Jordan Ta'amu is out.
Right.
But, does he really fit the bill in your eyes?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, he's got good mobility. We saw that obviously in this game. I think I recall back to the week prior was that week 7, I guess, when they came to Houston. And he was able to do the same sort of thing with, catching the defense in more spread type coverages and, bootlegging it or running it to make up yards when needed. Biggest thing looking at this game, I see, it's kind of a concern point for me. And it's not to say he can't pass good, but just, the 2 touchdowns that he got were, I guess, both on the ground. He didn't actually throw a single aerial pass touchdown. I wouldn't say that indicates they're not multifaceted because they've done plenty of passing, especially in this game. I mean, they had nearly double, I think, what Dallas had, if you're just looking at the passing yards. But you wouldn't expect the score to be what it was necessarily either based off of that.
So we can get into DC's problem now at the quarterback position. We'll save it for the playoff scenario section because DC's remaining schedule is a home and away against Orlando. And so with Orlando already clinched, it becomes a conversation as to, how hard is Orlando going at it? How, do they want to rest players, that kind of thing. I know they probably want that first guaranteed home game, but we'll get into more of DC's quarterback issues and Orlando's rest of the way thought process when we get to that section of the show. But let's move on to the next game. Boy, this was a shocker. I had to, in my mind, I thought that when DC went to Louisville last weekend, that they were going to return the favor and at least come away with a split.
Right.
But it's pretty obvious to say that Louisville's playing their best football right now. When I was in the post-game presser back in week 6 when I was in Louisville for the St. Louis game, understandably, Coach Redmond was pretty down. But, he come right out and this is what he said verbatim. We are not out of it. We are still in this thing. There's no quitting this team. We think we're a great team. So, at that point, when he made that comment in the postgame presser, under my breath, I'm thinking to myself, yeah. And you got DC back-to-back coming up.
Right.
So we'll say what you think after that, being 2-4 already at this point. Well, that's what they say, man. Prove me wrong. And he went out there and proved everybody wrong. Louisville put up back-to-back quality games, got quality wins.
Yep.
And really changed the whole view of DC's season. Man, well, let's get into it. We just want to get into the quarterback situation now for DC. They put in Spencer Sanders, and he went 7 for 15 for 83 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. His passer rating, 36.3. So here's my question for you. Do you think that Spencer Sanders was brought in because they view him as the next man up for DC? Or do you think it was more the fact that Jason Bean was not ready yet to come in?
He's been with them, 2 weeks now, at least? Bean has maybe longer.
I would sure think that he would be able to come in at least for spot duty.
Yeah, I don't think it was a matter of them making the call to pull in Sanders from a, being between a rock and a hard place. Like that in coach's mind, that probably just was their QB2 guy. And maybe that was a change from, weeks ago when I think Bean did get playtime, but he obviously struggled some. So, I don't know. I don't think they would do that on the fly, especially in a game like this one where they were really knowing they had to win. I think they put up a good effort, in my opinion. It's surprising to me how early in the game Jordan Ta'amu went down or had gotten injured. This was practically almost a full game start for Spencer if you take out the first half of the first quarter. The other 3.5 quarters of the game, Spencer was in. Now, granted, you look at the stats, and I noticed this too, just recapping the game. Like, I mean, they ran all over the Kings from a running game standpoint, which helped obviously keep, the play action components alive, made Spencer's job partially easier despite him having to, I think, run around for his life a lot. He got sacked 3 times. But all that said, I mean, I'm surprised they honestly played as well as they did. You made the comment about, Louisville peaking at the right time, and I think that's 100% true. But I think even for the folks, even DC fans, should really still be applauding how well the defenders played in this game despite losing their starting quarterback. I mean,
well, here's Chris's comment. My assumption is they probably didn't want to throw him to the wolves since Jason Bean probably hasn't had many snaps with the ones or twos. So, here's the question I'm going to pose to Chris, and I'll pose the same question to you, KJ. We all know DC's mantra, DC's reputation. Coach Harris plays one way. He wants his players to play one way. And with that comes unsportsmanlike penalties. With that comes roughing penalties. And he's more or less come out and said he doesn't care. That's their style of football. And they're not going to change. Okay, so how does a Jason Bean fit into this team when he comes in and he can't shake it? Because when he was in Louisville last weekend, the fans were relentless when he was coming down the steps. They kind of got the fancy entrance like some of the NFL teams do where the players come in through the crowd. They were pretty relentless on him about his sliding at the 1 yard line and not giving himself, trying to score that touchdown. How is Jason Bean received by DC, the players, the coaches, the fans, the locker room as a whole, coming in with that? I mean, can they give him the ball and say, lead our team to the promised land, when for lack of a better term, he's already carrying that much baggage to begin with?
I mean, here's what it comes down to. You can speculate all day long. The fact of the matter is if the defenders don't get Jason Bean from week 1 of the UFL season, then they don't want him in the starting. They shouldn't. They want that confident QB who is making, I mean, arguably, in my opinion, my memory's a little shady here with regards to the other 3 games of that first week of the season this year. But when I think back to that weekend and watching all 4 of those games as we kicked off the season, at least from 1 week, that first week of play, I looked at Bean as a potential MVP QB out of the league. I mean, he was pinpoint accurate. He was making deep throws that looked, I mean, NFL level passing precision, I'll put it that way. And he looked confident. Granted, through the course of the rest of the season, we've seen a lot of more chinks in the armor get exposed with him. I think his confidence has suffered. And now, he comes into a new squad where obviously you have to have not just confidence in yourself, but you have to have the confidence of the team around you. To Chris's point, maybe that is partially why they put in Sanders. He's a kind of more of a quote unquote career guy with the defenders. He's been there more than just this season. So he even has that kind of cohesive understanding of the team, what's expected, the playbook, all that sort of thing. I personally, like I said, I think Bean should theoretically been there long enough to learn the playbook and such. But, we don't necessarily know what reps they're running with each QB week to week in practices. So there could be some truth to Chris's speculation there. That's the other dicey part I would throw out there, though, Ed, to your point, is even if they want to, in their head, conceptually give Bean the benefit of the doubt and go, hey, I think with this, we can get this guy back to his week 1 prowess. It's do you take the risk during the week of practice when you could be just polishing up Spencer to maintain his confidence level and get him better? Or do you take the flyer play on Bean in hopes that you can get him to return to the mental state he had in week 1? I think that's a bigger gamble, in my opinion, pun intended. But I think that's a bigger gamble than sticking with Spencer. I mean, and I'm going off of what I saw this past weekend from gameplay. I mean, yeah, there were struggle points. He was essentially 50%, I guess, accuracy with passing. But I mean, he kept him in the hip to keep him in the game. For better or worse.
DC, 2 weeks ago was in the catbird seat. Now, and they'd have been in the perfect position to start doing some series or half a games or whatever with Jason Bean. If they're sitting with one loss, it makes it's a big difference. But now, having lost their last 2 games, they got to right the ship, and they don't have time to experiment.
That's kind of
so. I just wonder if, looking big picture, does Jason Bean give them the better chance to win it all again? Maybe. But to right the ship right now and just get things on an even keel to make the playoffs and get into the playoffs, maybe it's Sanders' team to get them there, and they're going to just do a wait and see on how he performs this week. I mean, they finished with back-to-back games against Orlando. So I say Orlando comes out fighting in week 9 because they want to protect at least their, they're not going to get a home game for the championship, of course, but they can get a home game for that round 1. So it's important to them to stay in the top 2 seeds. So my guess is they're going to, if they have to pick week 9 or week 10 to really go for it, I think they go for it in week 9. So if they have injuries that need healing or anything like that, they can take their foot off the pedal more in week 10 than they would be able to in week 9, not knowing what, week 10 would hold if they did take the foot off the gas on. But again, they say you take the foot off the gas, it's not always easy to put it back on the gas. So it's going to be interesting. Going to be very interesting. Let's turn over to Louisville. If you had to put your finger on it, KJ, when it comes to the Louisville Kings, what was it that clicked these last couple weeks that really has propelled them into really being, they're in that 5th spot right now, but that's by tiebreaker.
Right.
So a lot of that can change by the end of the year because Louisville has a pretty tough road the rest of the way, and they go by strength of schedule for, the second tiebreaker. So, I mean, but what would you put your finger on Louisville as to why all of a sudden they're having success when they just were losing games for, you name it, the first 4 weeks of the season, they found ways to lose, and now they're winning those games.
I think, having Chandler Rogers in there at quarterback has definitely helped them. I think the team has, at least on the offensive side of the ball, seems to have holistic confidence in his leadership. At least looking back over the stats from this weekend, I'd say, it seems like they have a better balance in both kind of balancing the ground and the aerial attack on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, too, I think they're, as you've used the terminology plenty of times, but the whole bend, don't break mindset, I think, is something the defense has gotten a little better with as well. And that's obviously helped keep them, at bay in some of these close games, especially one like with DC. I noticed a lot of, longer runs against DC this weekend, but I also, have to take into account the fact that they were playing the team with arguably the best rushing game in the league. So, with that in mind, I think they did well enough to, the critical 3rd down, 4th downs, whatever, what have you, is where they were able to at least hold it down, prevent DC from, getting a score every single drive, theoretically. And, when it really counted at the very end. Obviously, the defense made that kind of championship level stand where, DC's knocking on the door. They need a 3-point conversion to essentially tie it up to try to go to overtime. And, Louisville kept them from getting there. So I think holistically, this team has just steadily improved on all sides of the ball, little bit by little bit. They've worked through the adversity of, the struggling weeks they had earlier in the season, to your point. And I made this comment way back, I think our first week or even the preseason show we had before the season kicked off, looking at the schedule and the season. I made the comment about how I for Louisville's sake, when we looked at their schedule in the long run, I said, I hope that they struggle up front so that they can get better in the end, because I knew if the opposite were to have happened, they would have been, probably like a metaphoric Dallas, where it's like, oh, we're real hot in the up front, but then people figure out our recipe, and man, it's game over in the second half of the season. So, with that in mind, I think that's, outside of week one's upset win against Birmingham, they caught AJ and company a little off their game, but they had the home field advantage there. They got the win in week one, but after that point, what you made comment, they struggled. So, but they've rallied through that, and I think they've done well. I don't know if I see Chandler Rogers being a championship level QB, but I think they have a shot theoretically to get, snag that fourth playoff spot.
Well, if you remember at the beginning of the season, every team's kicker was hot. I mean, they were kicking 50-yard plus field goals like they were nothing.
Yep.
And here lately, there's only been a few teams that their kickers remain strong. There's a lot of kicking problems in the UFL right now. So Louisville has a good enough defense where they can rely on kicking field goals and making it work. I mean, Tanner Brown, again, player of the week on special teams this last week, had 4 field goals. But when you have a kicker, and Coach Redmond's come right out and said that he loves Tanner Brown and that's his kicker.
Right.
That when you know that your kicker can go out there and he's going to get you that field goal no matter what, it sure helps
For sure.
in decision making. And I think that Louisville's defense has become stout enough to where they're perfectly okay with getting into a field goal contest. Now, will that serve them well down the stretch? Will that style of play make it in the playoffs? Who knows? But it's working right now. And this game was crazy from the get-go. Well, was it 2 touchdowns scored in the first minute and a half or something like that? So kudos to Louisville, because there's not a betting man out there, I don't care who you are, that when they played back-to-back against DC that would have took Louisville to sweep. No way. So let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next game. Just keep things rolling here. And let's go to this game. That's why I had trouble finding it, KJ. I was trying to lose it, I think.
Wink, wink. Yeah.
I was trying to convince myself that it
It
didn't
didn't
really
happen.
happen.
It was a bad dream.
It
It was
didn't really happen.
oh man.
Here is a perfect example. Everybody had, for the most part, had St. Louis number 1 in the power rankings. But I'm sitting in the crowd and I'm watching this game, and I'm saying St. Louis problems are 5-fold. You want to hear what the 5-fold is?
But give it to us.
Number 1, how do they get the ball to Hakeem Butler and have him actively involved in the game instead of just being a decoy? Not once, when we get in the red zone, can you honestly tell me why there is no fade, no jump ball, no nothing thrown to this guy when they're in the red zone. He is like a decoy. They put him off, 90% of the time he's not in the huddle. He basically stands over on the sideline,
Right,
and runs his pattern. He comes off for a play or two, comes back on. But it seemed like in this game that he was more of a decoy. Perez didn't even look his way a lot of the times, and especially in the red zone, a lot of times the ball was snapped and Perez was looking on first thing at the other side of the field and wasn't even looking at Butler. So I don't know if that's an AJ. So my problem number two, AJ and Perez have to figure out what a successful offense looks like. It was easy for me, and in the last couple of years I bagged on Perez pretty heavy. So I'm not gonna turn around and claim to be, a big fan and bagging wagon jumper. I'm just telling you what I saw on Saturday, and what I saw was the receivers consistently getting thrown the ball behind them. They were not led. Number two, there was not any zip on the ball. It seemed to me like the balls floated a lot, and it gave the Houston defenders more than enough time to make up. If the wide receiver was wide open or whatever, it gave them time to close in before the ball got there. So whether Perez is starting to show his age a little bit as far as what kind of mustard he can put on the ball, I think it's important that St. Louis, AJ has got to get together with his quarterback and figure out what a successful offense looks like. And I think part of that has to be you've got a running game that's being underutilized right now. In the first part of the season, they had Kevon Latulis in there, and he was running flare passes and stuff out of the backfield to showcase his speed. And they've kind of even won away with that too. So that's the second thing. The third thing, Perez's timing with the wide receivers has to improve. There's still way too many passes that you can easily see that aren't on target just because the timing's not there yet.
right.
You've got 6 different receivers out there that all run different speeds, and he just doesn't know the receivers yet. So I got to believe that that's going to get better with time too. Number 4, I've already touched on it. That was don't forget about the running game. The running game has to increase. Number 5, which is a very big problem for St. Louis right now, clock management.
I was going to say that was the keynote point of the game right there.
Clock management was terrible. And not only that, when you're playing at home, how do you get 4 false start penalties at home? And which killed them down the stretch,
right.
because they had to burn a timeout to avoid the 10-second runoff on the last false start.
Right.
So that pass over the middle, they got tackled at the 2-yard line, and they didn't have time to clock it.
That play call was just bad too. I think honestly, I was surprised AJ didn't have the mental wherewithal to know that that's an outs play, hands down 99%.
Well, it's an outs play, but you can say that about AJ, but you can also say the same about Perez, that he threw that ball over the middle.
He did, but I mean, they had literally I guess I have to look back at the routes the other receivers ran. I know that the outer receiver, whoever it was that he threw to on that ball, was a cross-field slant play, but I didn't see the lower 2 receivers in the replay of who it was, which routes they ran. But yeah, they had a chance to win it. So it's sad. It's that whole thing we bag on Houston for in some of the past weeks we play is they find ways to lose the game. To your point, it's they could have won.
On a bright note though, KJ, Deckers 15 for 22, 155 yards, 2 TDs, a 99.6% passer rating, which I believe is the highest passer rating of any quarterback for the week. And so I thought Houston's offense, that pick six St. Louis gave them didn't help. But Houston, especially in the first half, I thought was very efficient on offense. They stayed ahead of the chain. Deckers, I thought he played very well the first half. Second half, St. Louis defense rose up and really shut Houston down for all intents and purposes. But again, I don't know. I'm trying to not be too critical because one weekend is not a season make.
I mean, we've only got 2 weeks left, Ed. We're getting there to where at this point you could technically say that, but especially for half this league right now because of how close the standings are. But
so in Houston like you do, you keep track of them a lot better than I do. What's your thoughts on Houston, how they come out of the gates this weekend? I mean, they're still alive in the playoffs, and we'll get into those scenarios later.
Yeah.
Their season isn't over, so
no, it's not.
What kind of a team are we going to see this weekend out of Houston?
I mean, I would hope they come with the same vigor, honestly, they had against Orlando with just less careless mistakes and hopefully a little bit better coaching than what we saw that week, in my opinion. If Deckers can come out with the same level of grit, I guess is the best word to use. As you said, their offense was just rolling really there the first half of the game. They can come out swinging hard at the beginning of the game, especially being at home. I think that will help them immensely. And then, really what comes down to it, I think, which is probably one of the bigger deciding factors with how we lost Orlando, amongst a couple other reasons, was, Boylan wasn't perfectly accurate that night. If he can drill every opportunity he's given against St. Louis at home, that'll help us even more. I definitely could see them theoretically sweeping it. I guess I just don't have the confidence from the standpoint of, I don't think we've pulled that off at any point this year. Granted, I don't think Houston's really had many back-to-back games as much as some of the other squads have in the league. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, I guess. So one caveat is we're the first team, I think, that St. Louis has played in a back-to-back setup all season. So I can't look at, history, so to speak, to be the indicator like you could with teams like Columbus or Louisville and, kind of make the prediction of, this team will rally even if they are, the bottom half of the league. So, I think St. Louis will put up a good fight. To your point, though, it will come down, I think, very much so to, Perez has to make improvements this week with AJ. They've really got to get their ducks in a row because if they come out doing the same thing they did this week, it doesn't matter how much defensive prowess you've got. If you can't, move the ball down the field at all on offense, you're going to have problems.
The pick six was a killer.
Yeah.
That kind of put them down. Was it 14-3 at that point? And the defense, take away that, Houston scored 16 points, which any given day I'll take that. With St. Louis's offense, they should be able to win games like that. So I don't know. I just look for bigger and better things out of the St. Louis offense, and I think this week will be the true test to see to see if that's going to be the case. Let's move on to the last game of the week, and that was here we go. Columbus against Birmingham. Birmingham pulls out a 14-3 win at home. One of those scores coming on a blocked kick. So I guess here's the conversation we can have, and here was the I saw this post on Facebook and it made sense, so I'm going to throw it up here. Let's see, where do I have it? Here we go. Birmingham before DTR 1-3, after DTR 3-1. So here's my question. What is it about DTR that has made such a change for Birmingham? Is it that he's not making the mistakes that Matt Corral made? Because obviously, if you look at DTR's offensive stats, they're not going to blow you away. And against Columbus, take away the block kick, they got a touchdown for the whole game. So what do you think, KJ? What's the difference in Birmingham after the trade for DTR?
I mean, the biggest change I've noticed from week to week in the gameplay is he's just lighted a new spark in the offense. I think the guy has immense and endless moxie, which, you talked about this earlier with a team like DC, where coaches, making the comments about how we're going to play the way we're going to play, and, kind of just a big head, like it is what it is. I think the thing Dorian brings to the Stallions is like, every game, it's almost as they move down the field, he's sitting there, smack talking, japping with the defenders. He's mouthing to the sideline. Like, most people would view that as a negative thing, and I would concur in general. Like, sometimes that's frowned upon, but for me, to him, it comes off more as confidence when I view it from him, and I feel like maybe that's how the offense views it as well. It seems like there's just a different vigor of leadership that he brings under center than maybe what we had with Matt Corral earlier in the season. You got a guy that was more of a game manager, knew his role, attempted to do his role, but he was, the silent reserve type. And for whatever reason, I think the guys have responded more to, Dorian and the way he plays. He's not perfect, like you said, but I think, foundationally, I don't have their stats side by side. I was trying to pull up Corral to see what the difference was this season. But if he's thrown less picks, then he's already done foundationally a fundamental that's, I'd say, more equivocal to a QB's long-term success. Simply protecting the football, not making big mistakes such as that are going to do you wonders in the long run. Obviously, they've had more time on their plate too to fine-tune, polish things, whether it be play calling, schemes, all that sort of thing. But I think Dorian definitely brings a different level of vigor to the offense, and that's you've seen that in the results in the win-loss column. So.
I gotta believe though that with a general lack of offense as it pertains to Birmingham, are they a serious? I mean, they're a serious playoff contender because they're sitting in the number 4 hole right now. So they if things started tomorrow, they would be in the playoffs. There's a difference between making the playoffs and being able to make some noise. So I guess at this point, kudos on Birmingham getting back to 500. And I remember asking AJ the question weeks ago when they were, I believe they were 1-3 at the time. When I asked him if if he thought that they still could seriously contend, and he made the comment I believe it was when they were 2-4, not 1-3. They were 2-4. He made the comment, I fully expect to win out. And if we win out, we could be as high as the number 3 seed. So far, being 4-4, they're winning out. And, he could very well get to the number 3 seed. So they don't lack the confidence by any means. I'm just not sure that the offense is going to be good enough to propel them past a one and done type of scenario.
Right.
So as far as Columbus is concerned,
they're in my eyes, they're playing for pride at this point. I mean, it is what it is, the one thing you could give them from a consistency standpoint, looking ahead to week 9, is the past 2 head-to-head matchups they've had with other teams. They have rallied in the second go-round and pulled out the response win. Despite their struggle points, to me, almost this is their week 10, just because they stand a greater chance at this point this week than I think even next week to really, though it's true for both weeks, I guess, spoil the opposing team they're playing's, potential future for playoff hopes. Birmingham and Louisville are both kind of right in there neck and neck, in the contention for things. So I don't know if they'll be able to pull it off or not, because despite all we've seen, I feel bad for Jalen. I feel like I really expected a lot more from him this season. He struggled more than I would have ever expected him to, honestly. And it's even more surprising when you kind of meditate on the fact that they have, Tua Tawa there as their running back, a guy from, Michigan who was so dominant last year. It's crazy. It's pretty. I think all you can lean your hat on with that is, it comes down to coaching. They're a good textbook case example of that, I guess.
Well, let's get through the players of the week. On offense, Jack Plummer, Orlando, 308 total yards, 2 touchdowns rushing, went 24 for 36 for 238 yards. He takes home Offensive Player of the Week honors. Defensive Player of the Week. This is something. I mean, it's Ty Crowder, Birmingham linebacker, 11 total tackles, 6 solos, 2 tackles for a loss, and 1 interception. That's a full day. That is a full day. He definitely earned that. And then for special teams, again, we talked about it earlier. Tanner Brown, kicker from Louisville, went 4 for 4 on field goals, with the long being a 60-yarder.
Would you call him our 2026? Is it Kyle Bates? I'm trying to screw up his last name, but
Bates.
Yeah, see the 2026 UFL Bates. I feel like he could be theoretically.
Yeah, he's hitting his stride, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then through week 8, we'll go through these quick. Through week 8, quarterbacking, Jack Plummer, Orlando's, sitting at first in passing with 1,710 yards. You got Jordan Reed with Dallas, Jordan Ta'amu, of course, who's going to be sidelined, so he may get passed by Jalen McClendon with Columbus.
Right.
And then Dorian Thompson, DTR, has finally made the list, knocking Jason Bean out of there. So that concludes the passing. Now if we go to rushing, Jarvion Howard with St. Louis Battlehawks is sitting first, 387 yards, followed by Jashawn Corbin, Orlando, Deion Jackson with DC, John Lovett with Columbus, and Day Hunter with, is it Dede or Day? I don't know.
Day, I believe.
With Dallas. Jarvian Howard, I think he could have a lot more yards. I think he's being underutilized. At the wide receiver, receiving yard position, Jaden Mickens, who's really hot right now. He's leading the pack with 519 receiving yards, followed by Hakeem Butler with St. Louis, Tyler Vaughns with Dallas, Elijah Badger with Orlando, and Ty Martin with Columbus. Then let's go to the defensive side of the ball for tackles. Ty Crowder sitting at first with 64 tackles. Not too shabby. Tony Fields with Columbus, followed by, oh boy, how do you even say that? Kalauba, Tazino, Birmingham, Jaheim Thomas with Louisville, and Anthony Hines with Houston. Then we go to sacks. I was wondering when my man Peta was going to finally make it into he's finally made the list. So
On the board.
he's on the board. We got Cam Gill with Louisville sitting at the top with 8 sacks. Malik Fisher, Houston in second. Derek Robertson, which one of in the comment line, he's got a vote for MVP. We got Peta and Carlos Davis both sitting with 5.5 sacks. Then for INTs, interceptions, Corey Mayfield with Louisville sitting at 4. Sean Wade and Major Burns with Dallas and Houston sitting at 3. And Sam Kidd and Jarian and Conley, both with DC, are sitting at 2. So that wraps up. And then what was pretty impressive today that I saw was posted, Chris Rowland with Orlando. He's back-to-back total yards leader. New team, new season, same result.
No one's surprised by that. Absolutely no one. No ball.
So that concludes the leaders so far through week 8. Let's go ahead and hear from our sponsor. And when we come back, we'll get into a little bit more of the UFL news. And hopefully Brett's going to join us here at some point so he can give us his power rankings heading into week 9. We'll be right back. Let's talk about a couple injuries that happened this last weekend. Tyler Neville with St. Louis Battlehawks. That's a big one for St. Louis. He was really doing a good job at the tight end position. And he actually was showing a little attitude, which, like you said, KJ, normally can be a problem, but I think it went a long way in getting his team fired up as well. He goes down with I think it was a Frank injury. I think he's going to have surgery. I guess the one saving grace is that St. Louis was able to sign this is a well-known name in UFL lore the last 3 seasons, and that's Sal Cannella. He's a 2-time all UFL selection. He also spent the 2025 season with the Cleveland Browns. He obviously was one of the main targets for Luis Perez when he was a Dallas Renegade. So the big question is Sal in game shape? And is he ready to be inserted in week 1? I believe he's probably got to be. I mean, if you spend a season on an NFL roster this last year, I'm sure that he was prepared and in shape looking for another NFL run, I got to believe. So I think that's a good comfort blanket for Perez. I'm interested to see if he's able to get him involved right away in the offense. And then we've got, of course, the bad injury to Amu. Don't know what the knee injury is. If there's any DC fans watching the show, Chris, if you have any insider knowledge of what kind of a knee injury it is, let us know. But for now, they're just calling it a knee injury. Let's talk a little bit. I don't know that KJ necessarily wants to talk about this, but I do. Replays in the UFL, and it's no team in particular. This is just replay officials as a whole. What are we doing? I mean, it's almost like Blindino and Mike. I'm trying to think what Mike's last name is. For some reason, someone said Squirrel. I'm at that age where I can't remember names for nothing, but it's Mike somebody. Anyway, both of them, they've adopted this saying, and they used it some last year. You heard it some last year, but
Pereira or Pereira.
There you go, Mike Pereira. There you go. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. They're using this. We got to look at these plays at game speed. We got to look at these plays the same way that the refs are looking at these plays and making our judgment based on that. No, you don't.
No, you don't. Yeah, that defies the entire logic foundation of a replay.
God.
Yeah.
That's why you've got the 15 screens. That's why you've got the ability to slow things down. That's
why you zoom in on a blade of grass and see how high it is away from a player's foot for an out of bounds call.
Blindino this last weekend made a comment that, well, I want to look at this at game speed, and I'm looking for a tug or a grab, and well, you know, it may be a frame or two early, but I'm going to say no pass interference. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're saying there, with the benefit of having the monitors and being able to slow plays down, that obviously the wide receiver was impaired, whether it's a frame too early or 2 frames too early,
Right.
It's still too early.
Yeah.
But you decide to not make the call because
there's a balance factor, which I feel like even he is missing. And to your point, how he quoted it and made his comment, it's, you know, and they reiterate this all the time when they're doing NFL replays. And I think they've even made the comment, you know, before in 1 or 2 of the officiating segments that have occurred in the UFL. But it's the whole mantra of, we're going to take whatever call was made by the ref in the field, unless we're talking like a challenge where a coach is challenging a no call that was missed. That's a different story. But for the ones in which they make a call one direction, the whole premise is that they can slow it down like you're talking about it, but it needs to be beyond reasonable doubt or whatever to overturn the call. That doesn't mean you can't slow it down and get granular, but that's the balance metric of, no, you don't have to review it in full time. You can slow it down. And yes, the ref could theoretically be wrong depending upon the call. So I'm with you. That is frustrating.
If you're not going to use what you have at your disposal, I mean, that was the whole object of having it, the ability to challenge penalties, have the ability to challenge interference, that kind of thing, was having the equipment to look at it when a referee doesn't have that same opportunity, or maybe didn't have that same angle or whatever. But to take a replay official and say, I need to put myself in the position that the referee has and make a judgment based on what the referee saw, well, then what are we doing? That
negates the entire premise of having multiple camera angles, to your point, Ed, because it's like it's almost wanting to honor the biasy or the filtered view of a one angular ref who only sees the play from one direction, one side of the field.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. You have all these cameras and different angles so that you can capture what they can't. It's meant to bridge the human,
and you watch the head coaches, and the head coaches are just shaking their head because it's like everybody and their uncle is sitting there looking and seeing the very same thing, but yet they come back and they deny the challenge. Let's see, what is Speed say? Are the officials on the field more lax on calls, knowing every play is going to go to a booth review?
God, I hope not. I mean, that's a great question, but like that even further stresses the point to Ed's argument of like, okay, well then what are these bozo zebras doing in the off season? Do they have a council or an oversight committee that actually is reviewing how the season went, how calls were made, what the proficiency factor of every ref was? Or do they just get, an endless continual mulligan week in and week out to be lackadaisical and, your average government employee? Like,
referees, are they going to be the 8-year-old or the 6-year-old that's playing t-ball for the first time? That goes out there and they're picking dandelions and they're throwing the flowers up in the air because they know that they don't have to make a call because the booth review, like Speed's saying. But if now they're going to turn around and say, okay, that ref that didn't see it because he wasn't paying attention or didn't have the angle or whatever it is,
right,
you're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Well, then you've totally –
they might as well remove the ability of
what the whole
right. It's like don't even let coaches challenge for no calls in the game then, because that's the whole premise that why that ability exists. Let them go back to only being able to challenge for ball placement or ball position in the field.
So let's last week there was a lot of questions, and even I questioned what the tiebreaker rules were for the standings. So the league has come out with their tiebreakers. Number one is head-to-head, of course. We knew that one. But number two is basically a strength of schedule, strength of victory, best, and then it goes best net points in all games, best net TDs in all games, best combined ranking amongst all teams and points scored and points allowed. And after that, you just get out the coin, because if there's still a tie after all that, I mean, I got to believe that the first three is pretty much going to be the tall tale about who gets in, who doesn't get in. So using head-to-head strength of victory and best net points in all games, here's what your current week 8 standings looks like. Orlando at first at 6-2. St. Louis got the nod over DC by tiebreaker. I got to assume it's probably strength of schedule because net points, I would think DC would have that. They had a couple blowout wins, I believe. Then you got Birmingham and Louisville sitting at 4-4. Birmingham, I believe, has the head-to-head tiebreaker over Birmingham over Louisville, correct, KJ?
Yes, because of their week 1 win so far.
Yeah. So that's that puts Louisville behind the 8 ball big time because Birmingham and Louisville only played once. So Birmingham will always have the initial tiebreaker on Louisville. So those two can't finish tied. So I don't know if they get into a big group scenario where there's more than 2 teams to where head-to-head can't determine a clear winner if whether it falls to strength of schedule at that point. But Birmingham definitely has the leg up. Then you've got Dallas, Houston, and Columbus who all need a lot of help. So here is the scenarios. And let's talk about quick. Let me run the remaining schedule for Orlando. Of course, we know they play DC home and away. We got the Battlehawks. They're at Houston, followed home by Dallas to finish their season off. You got DC's a home and away with Orlando. So those two can really knock each other off there. Birmingham's at Columbus and home against Houston. So as AJ talks about winning out, I'd say it's probably a pretty good possibility if they can get the win in week 9 against Columbus. What kind of a Houston team will they face in week 10? Then you've got Louisville at home against Dallas and then at Columbus. So I can easily see Louisville with a good chance to finish out with 4 straight, which who would have thought? Because I know when we put up the remaining schedule back when there was 4 weeks left and Louisville had that home and away with DC, I thought there's no way Louisville is done. But Louisville is very much in it still. Then you've got Dallas. They finish out Louisville, and then they have to travel to St. Louis. Got to think that's pretty stout remaining schedule, especially with both of them being on the road. And then Houston, of course, got a game this week at home against St. Louis and at Birmingham. So what does that mean for playoff scenarios? Let's put that up. DC clinches a playoff spot if they beat Orlando or Columbus beats Birmingham and Louisville beats Dallas. So the water's been kind of muddied a little bit with DC. It's not as clear cut as it was a couple of weeks ago. St. Louis clinches a spot. They just have to beat Houston. They beat Houston. That's all they have to worry about. Birmingham clinches a playoff spot. If they beat Columbus and DC beats Orlando and Dallas beats Louisville and St. Louis beats Houston. So if you're Birmingham, you just got to win, baby, and let the chips fall where they may after that. Louisville's eliminated if they lose to Dallas and DC beats Orlando and Birmingham beats Columbus. Let me get that banner off the screen. It's driving me crazy.
Jim Fisher brings up a good point here with this YouTube comment. I don't know if this is true or not because I haven't heard anything formally announced by the league. But he's claiming that win or lose, Orlando can't have home field advantage in the playoffs because of the Associated Soccer team playing those weekends.
Now that he mentions that, I
know
believe he is correct. I think I heard something about that. That Louisville was that. But, I got to believe at this point, Louisville is probably not really in contention for a top 2 seed. So
No, for sure.
They probably don't have a home game anyway coming.
Be interesting, though, Jim's comment. I wonder if, obviously you never typically try to purposely throw a game. But with that in mind, I wonder if Beck either wins this week and then rests week 10 or vice versa, or does both. I don't know if they can't afford to do both. Theoretically, I guess they can since they're locked. But if they're not going to have a home field anyways, do they get uber conservative with some of their starting selections for the next 2 weeks and just rest the heck out of their team? That might be a little overkill doing it 2 weeks in a row. But
for sure. So Louisville's basically they can't afford a loss. They got to win their last home game this week against Dallas. Dallas is eliminated if they lose to Louisville or Birmingham beats Columbus and St. Louis beats Houston. So those 2 scenarios those could very well play out too. So
it's good to know that Dallas fans have to root for Houston this week. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
Houston is eliminated if they lose to St. Louis. So that's pretty cut and dried.
Yep. Win or go home.
And Columbus, of course, if they lose they're eliminated if they lose to Birmingham or fill in the ors. There's not much light at the end of the tunnel for Columbus. So Columbus has to win and have all hell break loose for them to probably still be in contention.
Yeah.
And
as the saying goes, Aviators fans, basically y'all are wishfully hoping that hell freezes over for the first time in record human history.
So, KJ, since it doesn't appear that Brett's going to make it back for the show tonight, it looks like we're going to have to put his power ranking up. And, with my belief in power rankings at this point in the season, I'll let you comment on I'll put the power ranking up. You comment on it, and then I'll let you know if I disagree or agree with what you're saying. So take it away.
Yeah, so as we sit at this point in the season, I think Brett's got a pretty accurate reflection here. Obviously, as we get towards the end of the regular season, the wins and losses seem to line up more accurately with where every team sits in the power rankings. I think with what we've seen recently out of St. Louis, it's a coin toss between DC and St. Louis. So, you could argue for days over that little bit of difference between the 2 and the 3 spot. But I think they're both up there paired well. I don't disagree with Birmingham being in the 4 slot as of right now, just based off of the contentions that we already went through just a minute ago, Ed. But I would say I think the margin is, just as close, arguably, between DC and St. Louis as it is between Louisville and Birmingham, especially keeping in mind that, from a mental chess game capacity standpoint, Louisville has the upper hand on Birmingham if you want to get, technical. Houston sits at the 6th seed with where they're at. I know some folks would argue that Dallas should be ranked higher, especially when you consider our one head-to-head matchup earlier in the season and us losing. But I think with the way Dallas has been recently trending, and while we have gotten a couple losses the second half of the season, we have gotten some wins too, I think, against some of the odds. So I think those rankings make sense. And obviously, as we've already looked at with the playoff contention, Columbus being in the 8th seed, there's really no way to argue that. It's just, it is what it is. So I agree with, I think, arguably every one of these. From what I saw with how DC played Louisville, I might be willing to take the flyer and argue that those two should be flip-flop from my personal point of view. But I'm always partially a Surinder Pigeons hater to some degree too. So I try to justify it with actual factual context, looking at how Perez played this past weekend, but the bias is still there, I will humbly admit. So yeah, otherwise I think Britt did a good job here.
And from the
Perfect.
from the ashes rises the phoenix. I was just ready to say, Brett, on this power ranking, I was gonna say
you gotta come in panning, Brett.
I was gonna say this is
Just
Brett's
ran.
power ranking. I was gonna turn it into a who's hot, who's not. See how that changes this list of 8.
Yeah, that's true. I thought about doing it that way too, and then I looked back because I couldn't help myself because us guys kind of egomaniacs at times. I went back to look at my preseason rankings, which I will want you to post in a couple of weeks once the season's over with. They had a little similarity to what you're seeing right here. So just saying.
If it were me with the injury to Jordan Ta'amu and the fact that Louisville beat them twice back to back, especially one of them with Jordan in DC.
Yeah.
I would be more likely with, beating them twice that DC and Louisville should be flipped. I would probably put
and back-to-back weeks too.
Yeah. I would probably put Birmingham down to 5. I would put Louisville up to 3. DC slides to 4. I guess. And then St. Louis and Orlando. Depends upon what week it is. I mean, like I said, we thought DC were head and shoulders above everybody else, and then it's amazing what injuries can do. But Louisville come in hot and took care of business. So St. Louis.
And I thought about putting Louisville ahead of Birmingham too.
And
I think if we're treating this like the college football playoffs from last season was it or the year before, injured quarterback makes all the difference on how you rank your team. So I mean, yeah. I think these rankings are accurate if you acknowledge in the mythical world of Ta'amu not being injured. So that's a fair point.
Marty says it's incredible that you're not drinking Mountain Dew.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back healthy, Marty.
Oh, so he's drinking Coke instead.
These have a few less calories.
I would argue that Coke is the worst soda out of the two, but that's just me. There's only one of those two that paramedics use to pour on blood on the asphalt on the highway at car accidents, Brett. So just remember that when you're drinking that, eroding your stomach line.
That is true too. Paramedics and law enforcement used to tote that stuff around in the trunk of their car back in the 60s and 70s. They sure did.
Yeah.
So
somebody stepped in and taught me as a young kid.
So, Brett, I don't know if he was listening to the show on the way home, but we got into a conversation about DC and what was in their best interest. Last week, they had Spencer Sanders in there. They didn't give Jason Bean any time, and Jason Bean's been on their roster for a couple weeks now, so I got to believe that he's had some time in practice, probably very little because Ta'amu got hurt during the game. So, but going forward, do you think it's in DC's best interest to stick with Spencer Sanders and write him out? Or do you think Jason Bean gives them a better chance to win?
I feel like they need to try Bean. Bean was doing a good job in Louisville, in my opinion. It's just he wasn't willing to fight hard enough for that extra yard on a couple of plays, and it got him cut. It got him. I imagine he learned from that. But if you go back and look, I felt like he did a pretty good job in Louisville, other than those two plays that are, kind of those unforgivable plays that he made.
So Brett,
I don't know, man. It's crazy because 2 weeks ago we all thought DC was kind of the team to beat, and then they laid an egg in the second half against Louisville. Looked like they come back and beat Louisville. Then Jordan Tiamu gets hurt and is out for the season. Now all of a sudden we're like, we don't even know what we're looking at. Are they going to finish the season 5-5 and miss the playoffs?
Well, Louisville's got a really cool setup with their stadium. It's kind of like Dallas AT&T Stadium, where the players go through the crowd to come onto the field. And last week in Louisville, the crowd was pretty hard on Jason Bean when he was coming in, and there was quite a few things being said to him. But the 1 yard keeps coming up and coming up and coming up. So he carries that mantra into DC, and KJ and I were talking about it earlier. Knowing DC like we know DC, knowing Coach Harris like we know Coach Harris, knowing the players like we know the players. Does a quarterback that has the mantra on his shoulders of sliding at the 1 yard line instead of giving himself up to try and score the touchdown, how does that sit with DC? And is that somebody that they can get behind to take them to the promised land?
Well, you've got a lot of defending champion roster, and you've got a lot of guys that's been there for 3 years. And we got to remember, he didn't make that play in a DC uniform with that coaching staff. So if he comes out there, and everybody's favorite quarterback in the crowd is, of course, the backup. He comes in there second or third drive this week and just, you sense some momentum change, that all the teammates, everybody's like, oh, here we go. And the first time he takes a hit, puts his head down and takes a hit and gets up, all's forgiven, because ultimately, like I said, that was over a month ago. And that wasn't even for DC. So I really expect Bean to end up being the starter come playoff time. And I think he'll end up taking over the spot third or fourth quarter against Orlando. I really do.
So if you're Orlando, Brett, how do you handle week 9 and 10 now that you've already clinched a playoff spot? I mean, I think they definitely want to clinch a number 1 or number 2 seed to get that home game in the first round of the playoffs. But playing back-to-back games against DC, at what point do you potentially rest starters? All that whole scenario.
I don't know. That's a fantastic question. And again, that always, I mean, we're at week 9 and there's really nobody technically eliminated yet. Although Dallas and Columbus are in a bad spot, so is Houston. Every one of them's got to win out and get some help. There's only one team that's clinched, but there again, this goes back to what I've been pushing for the last few seasons, and that's the win bonus for each one of these guys. I know it's more money. Obviously, it's 45, 50 guys on the roster. Give them an extra 1,500, 2,000 to win, whatever. I mean, I know it adds up quick, but that's something this league I feel like needs to look at moving forward, and Mike Rapoli needs to look at moving forward, because extra couple grand for a win for some of these guys, it can make a difference. It's not like they're making $500,000 in the league. You know what I mean? So. Beck is a competitor, but there again, there's a few players on both sides of the ball that he really can't afford to lose going into the playoffs. So
We touched on this earlier, but I think Ed forgot already. Jim Fisher had mentioned that there's concern that the soccer team there in Orlando is going to monopolize the stadium those last couple of weeks, so it won't even matter if they get the 1 or 2.
Oh, that was. Oh, I thought you were talking about
No,
Liberty.
it was Orlando. Yeah, that's the
Oh,
one.
I thought
yeah, I'm worried. I haven't heard that until
I heard it
I saw that comment coming home, but yeah, I haven't. I don't know if that true.
I mean, if it is, I think that definitely changes how theoretically Beck may address this. That was my whole thing. Is like if that assumption is true, or if that allegement is factual, then I mean we're gonna have if they do try to vie for the 1 or 2 seed, we're gonna have a reoccurrence of Michigan and Birmingham from last year, basically, where technically we should have been playing in Detroit, but we weren't because they didn't have Ford Field access that game.
Yeah, Mike's gonna have to fix that shit moving forward. I hope that's not the case. Maybe I saw that guy's comment coming down the road, and I hoped he was inaccurate because we haven't heard that. But
Well, I apologize for that, KJ, because I had Louisville
yeah,
in my head at the time he was mentioning that. So
Jim might know something we don't, but I would say usually the league is fairly good about announcing that up front if they know about it. I mean, that was the whole, partially, I think, to your point, Brett, why we waited for so long to get the championship announced, because there were so many rumblings early in the season about, well, DC's not going to have venue availability at the end of the year, so we can't have a championship there, all this sort of thing. So, I mean, I think the league would hopefully do its fans the service. To your point, everybody needs to make travel plans for all this stuff. We're already less than a month away from that, if they know, they should let folks know so that they don't have this, looming preconceived expectation of something that's not even achievable.
And again, we've noticed, and we've been told for 5 years now, that one of the most difficult things with these leagues or with spring football the last few years is the scheduling aspect of it, because all the teams are third or fourth fiddle or second fiddle at all these venues, and it's unfortunate, but I do feel like moving forward, look, whether you have 8 teams or 10 teams, you don't know which one of these teams is going to end up. We like to predict and act like we know what's going on, but each one of them should have the opening the following week, the first round of the playoffs, that, hey, let's reserve the stadium in case this team gets a home playoff game. We've got to do something, either that or just have the semifinals in Arlington and invite all the fans from all the teams and have all the players hang out there for an extra week, and then do the championship game wherever you're going to do it. It's just, and thankfully Birmingham beat Michigan the last 2 years to earn that home field advantage, because it would have looked really bad if Michigan would have had a better record but still been playing in Birmingham. And Michigan ended up winning in Birmingham last year anyways. But to me, that's a very, very bad look. If you're wanting people to start taking this league serious, you're going to have to pony up a little extra money and reserve those venues for the first round of the playoffs, just in case. You can't.
Right.
Well,
for someone to be as mouthy and as vocal as Mike Napoleon, and I like him, I really do. Like Daddy used to say, don't let that alligator mouth overrun that hummingbird ass. If Orlando deserves a home game in week 1 and they're not there, that's a bad look, Mike.
So I'm going to give Jeff roses here. You're welcome to share the screen that I shared, Ed, if you want. But Mr. Jim Fisher has a son on the team, so I think his word probably has significant added credibility, and he's got the inside scoop. His son is the guard, Joey Fisher, number 76, for the Orlando. So I think he knows what he's talking about, folks.
Yeah.
Storm fans, this is something to contemplate. If his boy ain't lying to him from the locker room chat, you folks better does not be budgeting for a playoff home game ticket, because you're not going to even have the chance.
And there's Joey Fisher right there. So
Thank you for sharing
I
that,
don't
James.
think
Appreciate
I don't think it was a coincidence that we saw a Tuesday night game this year and a Thursday night game this
Right.
year, because I think as FIFA comes along and all
Right.
these soccer venues start getting filled up, I think that Tuesday nights and Wednesday night and Thursday nights all of a sudden become in play. So I guess I'm ready. I'm prepared for next season to really have something totally different from the norm for a schedule. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But one exciting thing for the UFL, and I almost forgot this, but I'm going to part the Red Sea and put it up so Brett can comment on it. It come out this week that the UFL had higher average viewership this year than the NHL average viewership for national TV. The UFL is averaging 631,000 viewers per game this season. The NHL is only averaging 546,000. So what does that say? What's that say, guys, about the UFL?
I think we're in a good place. I do want to play devil's advocate and say, well, there's a lot more games in NHL, and look, everybody always says that, but we're dominating.
You know what you can also say? There's only one wrestling match in the whole country. If you want to talk about WrestleMania, they're playing at one venue where the whole world is the fans. So it's one event. That's it. I mean, you can say that about a lot of other things. You can pick your poison. But if you strictly go off average viewership, the NHL's been around for how long?
Right. Well, and to counter argue your point, Brett, I'll say if we were in the regular, like midpoint of the regular season or even the beginning of the regular season of NHL play, totally hands down, your argument would take the cake. But we are literally in playoff hockey, to Ed's point. So it's like, I'll concede, and I do agree. I think off the rip, just viewing this, all this confirms is that football is America's sport. We all know that. We already knew that. Rapoli has stated that more than once this year. But all that being considered, to give NHL its partial roses, you're in the heart of like hockey season, you know, the dance and the chase for the Stanley Cup. And the fact that we can compete with that, even with a smaller league, is I think admirable for sure.
Yeah, hey, you know me. I don't get no more. You don't get no more pro spring football than myself, and you know the MLS. Hell, I think they're only averaging 150,000 viewers per game. I also found out, and it was the game that we were missing 2 weeks ago. We never got any ratings on. And I think Greg Parks posted it today, and it was actually good news. It was Birmingham and Dallas, I believe. Wait, it was either Birmingham, Dallas, Birmingham, and Orlando. It was the game we could not get ratings on. This was 2 weeks ago. And anyways, they averaged, I think, around 880,000 and pushed over 900 a couple times during that game, which that's another really good number. So we've already had a couple go well over 1 million. I anticipate the championship game go over 1 million. The playoff games is probably going to be 700,000, 800,000, 900,000. I mean, it's a really good sign. I don't know if y'all saw earlier, I shared it in the chat, you know, but John Gruden's going to the game Friday night in Orlando. You know, that's where he lives down that way. So that's exciting. He's going to the Fan Fest at, I think, 6:30 Friday night. So that's pretty cool.
Hey, Chucky, Houston, we want you next year.
Yeah, Chucky.
Get
Chucky, we need you to coach a team next year.
Yeah.
Could you imagine Chucky coaching a UFL team like the Gamblers or something like that? Man, that'd be freaking awesome.
I'd sell some jerseys right there. Yeah.
And Mr. Fisher, thank you so much for joining the show and giving us that intel. And we can't thank you enough for for participating, and good luck to your son. We've all watched him play this year. I didn't realize that's who you were.
So the 11th hour, Eric got me his picks.
You should have cut him off and forced him 500 ratings.
I should have imposed a 2-game penalty on him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, he's already in last place anyway, so I don't want to stomp on a guy while he's down.
I don't know if anyone deserved it. It's probably your nephew.
So with that said, are we ready to get into the picks for this week's games?
Let's go.
Let's go.
First game out of the chute. We got the DC Defenders, 5-3. And KJ, these are the latest and greatest, so don't ask me if they're current or not. DC 5-3 travels to Orlando. Orlando's last home game of the season. Who's 6-2? Orlando is 2.5-point favorites. It is the Friday Night Lights game at 7:00. An over/under of 45.5. Who wants to go first?
I'll take it. Beck's definitely, again, a competitor. And you saw what he did in St. Louis and what he's tried to do this year in Orlando. He's really big at trying to push for attendance and get interest, in that said market. And he always brings up attendance, makes posts on Facebook and X. There's no way he's not going to try to go out this week and get that W in front of the home fans. So, and DC, I think they fall to 5-4, and talk about going from the penthouse to the outhouse. Woof. Give Orlando to not only win, but to cover. And that's the bottom line.
So I'll go ahead and go next. I took Orlando as well. I think week 9 is the game out of the two that Coach Beck really wants to get under his belt. And then week 10, he'll adjust accordingly depending on what he needs to do with his roster. But I think DC, they're in a real quarterback quandary. And Jason Bean doesn't give him any assurances, but neither does Spencer Sanders. So how they tackle that game, offensive coordinator Fred Keiss, he's got his work cut out for him. But DC's got the moxie. They can pull it out. They definitely can pull it out. So we'll have to see. But I'm gonna take Orlando and give the 2.5 points. Eric took Orlando as well. So KJ, it's to you.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, boys. I think we can chalk this one up as a sweep. Don't know what week 10 will hold for the Storm and if they'll choose, justifiably and I think logically so. Beck's probably going to be smart enough to seat some guys in week 10. But this is definitely a good week to establish dominance. And I think, honestly, just kind of put the fire on DC because, there is a possibility they meet again in the playoffs. And what better thing to do than put the fear of God in them in week 9. So, yeah, I'm going to say Orlando takes this one as well. Covers.
So we got Marty with Orlando. We got John David's taking Orlando. So we got and Robert took Orlando. So we've got a clean sweep of Orlando across the board, even with our viewers. So next game is the Birmingham Stallions, 4-4. They're 1.5-point favorites over the Columbus Aviators, who's 2-6. Saturday afternoon game at 2:00 on ABC. Brett, you want to go on this one?
Well, you look at that line, and it's a must win for Birmingham to get to the playoffs. And Columbus has just been dreadful offensively here lately. And you think, wow, Birmingham's just a 1.5 point favorite. But I do expect a close, low scoring game. But if Birmingham loses a game the rest of the season, I think it's going to be week 10 against Houston. That's just my opinion. So give me Birmingham by a touchdown against Columbus.
Eric is taking Birmingham as well. KJ?
We are down to the wire here, folks, and I'm just going all in, metaphorically and literally. So if I lose, I'm going to lose in every fashionable way possible, and I'm going to go down in the most giant blaze of glory on God's green earth. Give me Columbus for the upset win. They've done well all season in 2 other head-to-head matchups they've had. Arguably, in my opinion, playing a progressively harder team each time in those matchups. And they've had the benefit of going back home in the second of those head-to-head matchups every time. This one is no different with Birmingham. Do I think technically they're in general the better team? No. But I don't have the gumption to bet against them right now, nor would I want to, because getting the Stallions an L just helps Houston that much more. So give me Columbus.
You stole my thunder, KJ. I'm taking Columbus as well for the very reason that you're talking about. Is I think that, take away that blocked field goal last week, Birmingham puts up 7 points against them last week, and that's it. So now they're traveling to Columbus, where Columbus gets to play a home game. I got to believe they want to put together a good game for their crowd, and you're giving Haley another shot. I mean, they pretty much ran the ball, and that's all they did last weekend. So this week they've got to have some kind of a mix if they plan to have any shot at all. But like you said, I think when Columbus come home on their away and home, they won pretty convincingly. And I think that Birmingham's got to solve, even though DTR is 3-1 as a Birmingham Stallion, he's not 3-1 because of DTR. They're 3-1 because they've just played better football as a team. So with that, I'm going with Columbus. So KJ and I went Columbus. Eric and Brett took Birmingham. And let's see what else we got here. Marty's taking Birmingham. John David's taking Birmingham. Marty, giddy up or whatever. But let me see. What'd Robert take? Robert's up here further. He's got Birmingham as well. So, KJ, we're out on a limb. So, third game of the weekend. Dallas Renegades 3-5 travel to Louisville, who's 4-4. Louisville is a very narrow 1.5 point favorite. Sunday, 3:00 game on Fox. Eric took Louisville on this game. I am also taking Louisville. I think Louisville's just got incredible momentum. They're in a must-win to have any shot to get in the top 4. They're on a roll, man. I think that Louisville's going to stick it to Dallas. I think Dallas can't seem to get out of their own way. I mean, Austin Reed, even when he does throw the ball directly into their chest, it's bouncing off their chest. It's bouncing off their helmet, straight into the other team's arms. I mean, so I'm going with Louisville as well. So Eric and I both take Louisville. What about you, KJ?
I got to reciprocate the love. Obviously, all Renegades fans are going to be rooting for Houston this weekend per the, win or go home stats that we already showed with regards to playoff outcomes. So I'm just going to reciprocate the love. I need the Renegades to beat the Kings so that my good old gamblers still stand a shot to get into the playoffs. So you scratch our back, we scratch yours, Renegades. I'm going with Dallas on this one.
Oh, repeat that, KJ. I had a squirrel moment.
I was telling Dallas
I
fans.
was reading the comment line, and I totally got sidetracked.
I was telling Dallas fans that since they're rooting for us in the playoff contingencies, with us having to beat St. Louis this week, that we have to reciprocate the love. So I'm rooting for Dallas to get the upset against Louis.
Okay, Brett.
Give me them Louisville Kings. Give me the Kings. They are hot as a firecracker and going to play in that home stadium at Lynn Field. Nothing stopping them. They going to 5-4.
So that brings us to the final game of the week. Huge game for the St. Louis Battlehawks to get back on track, get back to their winning ways. They are 5-3. They're 3-point favorites over Houston. Houston's playing for their lives for the playoffs. Eric is taking St. Louis. How about you, Brett?
Who are you taking?
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
I'll go first.
Well, what is a battle hawk?
Yeah,
A battle hawk.
Oh God, here we go.
I was a gambling man. No, I think I've got inside sources on this game, and I won't divulge my sources, but I've got a couple sources that I have a lot of faith in that have informed me that they will take care of business this week. That what happened last week is not going to happen again this week. So with that said, give another week of practice to AJ and Luis Perez to work on the offensive play calling, the offensive game plan, timing with receivers. I just think that despite everything that went wrong last week, to only lose by 2 yards, I think this week they're going to right the ship. I'm taking St. Louis. So which one you want to go first, Brett, or you want KJ to go?
I'll let KJ go last since it's his team. You know I'm pulling for Houston. You know that. You just know that. Not a fan, St. Louis fans. Not a fan. I'll leave it at that. But I try to put that off to the corner and say, even the games that Houston has lost at home this year, they've been nail biters. They beat Birmingham last second. Was it 59? Whatever it was. I just go through. I mean, the only thing that really worries me is just how dynamic St. Louis's front four is. I mean, if the line was 4.5, I would feel a lot more comfortable. I really think it's going to be a close game. I really do. But again, St. Louis's front is just. And I understand Houston won last week. Give me St. Louis -3.
You know who we have in our comment line, don't you?
Well,
Brett
who's
Walker.
that?
We got the man right here.
The man, please. Oh, thank goodness. Okay. I thought you were talking about
Oh,
something
what's
else.
up, man?
We got PETA in the comment line. And I thought, you know what? That
You're
someone's
the reason I took St. Louis -3, Peter.
I thought someone's playing me. But then I looked him up because I got to say that first name threw me off a little bit. So I looked it up, and by golly, that's who it is.
That's the
PETA
full
the
formal.
man.
Not no nickname there. That's the full formal on the birth certificate.
Hey, Peter, we've got a trophy at stake here this year. How you feeling? Are you healthy? Hammy good? Because I'm not a St. Louis fan, but I just took y'all -3. I'm just saying, and I was thinking of you.
I tell you what, you want to talk about a quality human being. That's PETA.
He's a good guy, huh?
He is a good guy. He is a good guy. In fact, I look for him to keep climbing that sack board. Now that he's made the board, man, it's only up from here. So we've got Brett. You're taking again.
Taking St. Louis.
I'm thinking St. Louis. I mean, I can just envision PETA creating a sack fumble or a pick six or something, and then all of a sudden he pops up on the comment. So I'm definitely sticking with St. Louis.
KJ, you read this comment right here.
Oh, I have no doubt.
You think
Peter will play, Peter will play great. Peter will play great.
Is that going to sway your pick at all?
It is not, sadly, unfortunately. This is a 11-man football sport. This ain't basketball. PETA, if you were LeBron James, I'd pick your team every single time. But this ain't basketball, and you ain't LeBron James.
Hey, when you're two-time defensive player of the year, as far as
He's
the
okay.
NFL is
Okay.
concerned, he is a LeBron James.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, once again, I'll defer to this isn't basketball, it's football. No, I think it'll be a close game. Brett's 100% right. And this is the fan bias in me picking two to some degree. I'll acknowledge I have been the crux of believing in superstition one moment, falling prey to it the next, thinking I'm the metaphoric Chad Doyle or Chad Coyle of UFL sports picking. Weeks I don't pick my team, they win. Some of the weeks I pick them, they don't. And I don't want to curse my team by my pick, but at the same token, we're getting down to the end of the wire here. This weekend is the Gamblers' last home game, and they're giving out freaking Chip Kelly bobbleheads. Like you can't ask for more. Like the spirit of Chip Kelly is going to lead us.
Jim.
Whatever, Jim, Chip. It doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter. Jim Kelly took the Bills to 4 Super Bowls.
The last name is what matters. That's what everybody remembers because it's on the jersey. My name, Kelly. My mother's name was Kelly. Okay, it's all aligning. All the stars are aligning here. Houston is going to get the win, and call will unfortunately not be the law in Week 9 of the UFL season. Give me the Gamblers all day, every day, till I die.
PETA, I'm here in Tuscaloosa, man, and I know all the good restaurants in Birmingham. Let's talk about a trade in Birmingham next season.
PETA, you're a great player.
You could be in the NFL, and I think you will be in the NFL next year. But if you're not, I think we need to talk with you about coming to the Ham, my brother, because I can hook you up with all the great restaurant places in Birmingham. Let's make this work. I'll start a GoFundMe to get you over to Birmingham next season, and we'll pay you under the table along with your regular UFL salary.
When it comes to St. Louis Battlehawk football, PETA is like, what do they call that? Apple pie and Chevrolet. I mean, it just you don't think St. Louis Battlehawk football without thinking PETA. So unless PETA's willing to bring Eric and me and my daughter and my mama bear and everybody to Birmingham with them, I'm afraid he's going to have to stay in St. Louis, Brett. I don't think it's going to happen.
Depends on how big we get that GoFundMe going.
All right. So that brings us to the end of another week. Oh my God, it's exactly 2 hours. We were right on the button tonight.
Hey, let's go.
We were right on the button tonight. So again, I want to thank everybody for letting us post our show on your pages. Really appreciate the viewership this year on the show. It's been fantastic, and I'd like to think that it's because we put a quality show out there for everybody. Really glad to see everybody in the comment line being a part of the show. With that said, I hope your favorite team wins this weekend. And I got to believe that most of your favorite teams are the end with Hawks. But that's not the case, huh, Brett?
Giddy up. Fuck 'em. Fuck 'em. Hey, even Rapoli likes the buck 'em. Of course, the USFL would not allow us for that to be our slogan, but I think with Mike in charge, I think he likes it. So, buck 'em.
Oh, boy. Well, everybody enjoy football this weekend. I know I am. I'll probably be sitting around a campfire this weekend watching it, but I'm going to be watching it. But can't wait to see another weekend of UFL football. And we're heading into the exciting part of the year, so we'll see who's in and who's out here real shortly. Until next week, enjoy football, everybody. We will see you again next week.
And that's the bottom line.